Hello, I'm Kristen Miller Zohn, Curator of Collections and Exhibitions at the Lauren Rogers Museum of Art in Laurel, Mississippi. And I'm pleased to be speaking today with Sue Carrie Drummond. Thank you very much for joining me, Sue Carrie.
Thank you for having me.
So you are currently an assistant professor of art at Millsaps College in Jackson, Mississippi. And I understand that you received your undergrad degree there too. Did you know you were going to be an art major when you started at Millsaps?
No, I'd always kind of been involved in art or making, painting and drawing. I did a lot of art classes in high school and even submitted stuff for Scholastic in my final year. But I think coming into Millsaps, had that kind of assumption that I think a lot of students have, which is I need to do something that is quote unquote practical, which, what does that even mean? And I planned on doing, I think, business because that seemed reasonable and like a Spanish minor or something. And I think that was one of the strengths of going to a liberal arts college is my advisor, saw that I was interested in art and she said, well, why don't you take an elective? It's important to be taking things that you like in addition to the requirements. And she recommended this digital book arts class in my freshman year with Professor Sandra Murkison, who later became my mentor. And I was the only freshman in that class. It was a class in which we were learning book structures and then using digital programs to make the content. And I never even thought about a book being able to be an art object. So that was a huge discovery for me. And it really opened up, I think, some considerations of what other things can be quote unquote art. But I remember the first day of class, I said, we were all introducing ourselves. I'm the only freshman. And I said, oh, I would love to be an art major, but I mean, how do you make a living doing that? And my professor looked at me, Sandra looked at me and she said, well, I did. So,
and I just think I'm doing right now.
Yeah, exactly. And I just remember thinking, oh my goodness, I totally put my foot in my mouth. And I stayed quiet probably for like a month after that and never said anything else. But yeah, I think that moment in that class generally was really exciting for me to, start thinking about a potential of being an art major. So after that, Sandra just really took me under her wing and she was really a wonderful mentor and really supportive and encouraged me to contemplate being a major. And so the rest is history, I guess.
So then you went to get your master's degree at the University of the Arts in Philadelphia. Can you tell us about that program?
Yeah, so when I initially started looking at graduate programs, I was interested in going into a program that covered bookbinding and book arts. And book arts is maybe a field that isn't super well known. It's basically just utilizing the book as an art object. So having multiple printed surfaces that can be turned through. Usually people incorporate a lot of narratives or images that are interrelated. So it's a way of showcasing multiple works at once. And I was really interested in that because of the tangible quality and the fact that it's an object that people recognize and there's an intimacy that people feel when they look at books and book art objects, so book arts. And that first class in my freshman year just really made me fall in love with the process. So I was really invested in finding a program that had that in it. However, every program that I found was printmaking focused or bookbinding focused in like a traditional craft manner. And so the University Arts, what I really liked about it, there were a couple of other programs that do this as well. But what I liked about University Arts was it fused, it was book arts specific, so it was using the book as an art object and not just craft of bookbinding. And it was also in a major metropolitan area. It was a really print heavy city. And so anyway, I kind of got thrown into a printmaking program, which was not actually maybe what I was interested in at the time. I took printmaking my last semester of my senior year and hated it. It was like the setup is not worth what I get out of it. It felt like it lacked the ability to control it in the way I wanted to. And then once I got into graduate school, I recognized that as a strength of printmaking. Printmaking involves, transferring an image or an idea onto a matrix and then using that surface to print an image. And so I started seeing that kind of matrix as an intermediary in the artistic process, I guess, is that the sense that I had not been spending a lot of time in the process and trying things out and failing and figuring out how to make it better or how to make it more complex. I'd been painting a lot before, and so there was a level of immediacy that printmaking just didn't allow for. So yeah, that was one of the things that I really liked about that program. And then just the city of Philadelphia is amazing. There are so many opportunities and, you know, tons of print folks there. There's a really great community.
And the book arts in terms of publishing goes way back to colonial times in Philadelphia too. So there's a great history of the book there in Philly. Definitely. So you actually have been fortunate to receive several grants and residencies all around the country. What are some of the highlights of those experiences?
I was super lucky to get a residency straight out of graduate school at the Minnesota Center for Book Arts. And it was a summer residency, but me and my partner at the time were kind of looking to leave Philly and find a new adventure. And so we just decided to move to Minneapolis. And so that residency allowed for a stipend. So they're really generous, and then they gave, you know, a stipend to the artist working there and a working space. And I editioned a book while I was there. And so for folks who don't know, editioning in printmaking is making multiple copies. So printmaking is a super old school version of photocopying, right before we had computers. And so I worked in paper and letterpress, which is also a very analog process of transferring letters onto a sheet of paper. And yeah, so I editioned a book there, and then we lived there for about a year. So I was really involved with that work center, artist center.
So have you had any other residencies or received any other grants besides the Minneapolis opportunity?
Yeah, so the kind of biggest one, or the most exciting one for me at the time, was I got this residency at Women's Studio Workshop. And I think that doing the residency at the Minnesota Center for Book Arts, which was a shorter term residency and it was a little bit more free form, was a great preparatory experience for the Women's Studio Workshop residency. So the one I got there, first of all, it's a great organization. It's women led, and it was established, like, I think, you know, back in the 80s by or 70s even, I think, by 4 women who were straight out of college who wanted to expose and get more women art made by women out into the art world. And so they have a specific artist book residency, which is 8 weeks and supported by a weekly stipend. So for artists who have to take time off, they support them by offering a stipend per week, room and board. And then they support the materials used. And so you have to make an edition of 50 books. So I submitted a proposal for a book in handmade paper with kind of a complex process that took a really long time. And I was really ambitious. I spent hours and hours pulling paper late into the night there, but was able to finish this book of 50 of this book. And they were wonderful in that they take part of the edition and they sell it to collections. So that was an incredible experience for me, especially that early in my career, to get a bunch of work out into special collections nationwide. And the organization generally, I just met a bunch of people there who were really great, a lot of artist fellowship, I think. So that is kind of the ideal, I think, experience for anyone who gets a residency. You know, it's like supported by financially, and then you get time and space to really focus on a project.
So what eventually brought you back to Millsaps?
So my mentor, Sandra, I kind of always, when I went out to want to teach, and I went to graduate school, I kept thinking, if I could teach at Millsaps, that would be the ideal scenario, right? Like I really liked the idea of teaching at a liberal arts college, and I kind of, I guess, wanted to be Sandra one day. And so she contacted me and let me know that she was leaving her position and that they were doing a search for a visiting professor. And so I was, again, very lucky to get the position there as a visiting professor. And then I applied when they opened up a tenure track search, and eventually became the professor, the second professor in the department. And I'm currently on tenure track. So I kind of got what I wanted, a dream come true of working at my alma mater. So I'm really happy about that.
That's great. So Millsaps is where I met you a couple of falls ago when I was preparing for the exhibition Mississippi Collegiate Art Faculty Invitational. And I was doing studio visits around the state to find eventually 11 artists who came and toured the museum and chose works to inspire their own works that we have on display at the museum right now. And so the inspiration works are next to the new works that were produced for the exhibition. And you chose this piece in the museum's collection. Can you tell us why you chose this one?
I was really torn between the exhibition of kind of baskets and the weaving. I can't remember what that collection was called. But I was really torn between those pieces and the silver collection, mainly because in my work at this period and even now, was thinking a lot about fiber and fiber processes, weaving, sewing, crochet, knit, lace. And so I really liked the idea of, specifically with the silver, the fact that a lot of the embellishments and the silver work kind of started to look like lace. So when I left that meeting where we toured the museum, I really wanted to work with a piece of silver, but I wasn't sure which one. And so when I was looking through the collection more closely, I found this one, and I liked the fact that it had a lot of curves. It felt like it was very figurative. It started to take on kind of a feeling of maybe a female figure, and also its ties to kind of a domesticity, I suppose, and like the use of it in maybe a dinner party or something like that.
And so here's the piece that you produced, a dowry, and you used screen printing to produce this work. Can you tell us how you did it?
Yeah, so the paper that it's printed on is handmade paper, which I had made previously. It's a fiber that when it's kind of beaten down in basically a blender or a grinder for a really long time, it becomes translucent. And so I've been using this paper a lot in my practice to kind of reference patterning paper. And then the like for like tailors or clothing patterns. And then the ink on top is screen printing ink. And the way that I did that was for screen printing, you take a mesh that's wrapped around a frame, you coat it in a light sensitive liquid called emulsion, and then you put something against that and expose it to UV light, and anything that is blocked, like any area of the emulsion that is being blocked out, will wash away. So basically I had a design that I made in Illustrator on a transparency, and I placed that against the emulsion and exposed it to a UV light. And so everything around the design hardened and stayed in the mesh. And then when you rinse it with a hose, the design kind of dissolves away. And that's where you can push screen printing ink through. So yeah.
And are these multiple layers on top of each other, multiple prints?
Yeah, so that's kind of the moment in the process where you kind of, I don't know, you start to make new decisions. I hadn't planned on having multiples, but I made a lot of prints, and because I had a lot of trouble with the ink going through properly, and so I started to see them stacked on top of each other. And so I really liked the fact that it was taking advantage of the translucency of the paper. And so I started thinking about kind of, just seeing those, creating more depth in the piece instead of having like a really flat piece. Because I think that's a drawback of screen printing sometimes is the ink itself feels so flat that it can really become two-dimensional. Your piece can become really two-dimensional.
Well, the effect definitely is one of three-dimensionality. You feel like you're seeing through all of the layers at one time, and the silhouette of the candelabra and then the three-dimensionality of the candelabra really comes through as your inspiration. Here they are side by side. What do you think when you see them both together?
It's really exciting to see them together. I haven't gotten to come to the show yet, so it's nice to like see them kind of side by side. You know, when I was starting to make this piece, I don't even know that I really knew exactly what I was wanting, like what I was exploring. I just knew I was thinking about domesticity, the idea of like female figure, lace. And so when I started making this design for the screen print, it started to take on the shape of a wedding dress. And so I started kind of sculpting design features from the candelabra around a female form. And I realized that, you know, I was kind of starting to explore. I had just gotten engaged also recently that summer. And when I was like the summer before I started making this piece. And so anyway, I just started thinking about the exchange of goods that happens during like pre-wedding and during a wedding, and kind of why do we do that? It felt really bizarre to me to be, you know, putting together registries and being like, give me things. And so I just started thinking about the history of that and the idea of dowries and this exchange of goods that happens around, you know, historically a woman being, you know, passed from one family to another. And so that's kind of how I ended up with this. And then the title Dowry for the finished work.
So I am pleased to say that a dowry has been acquired by the museum for our permanent collection. And it's such a wonderful bonus of putting on exhibitions that sometimes we actually collect works from the shows. Can you tell us about your experience working on this exhibition?
Thank you so much. I'm excited to have the piece in the collection. This is my first work that is not a book, being in a, you know, permanent collection, not just a special collection. So that's really exciting for me. The whole process of this show, I think, was really exciting. The ability to come into the space, learn about the history of the museum, go through the vault, go through the different collections. I feel like we were given a lot of freedom to just kind of pick and choose things from the museum, and I think it pushed me to start thinking about my practice and engaging in a conversation or dialogue in a very different way than I had worked before. And it started really making me think about how that can happen in the future. I would be really excited. I work a lot with fabric. I work a lot with clothing. And so I'm starting to think about, you know, what other spaces or collections or museums would there be a possibility of engaging in a dialogue between my work and artifacts that exist in that space. So it was a wonderful experience. I'm really glad I got to be a part of it.
Well, we definitely appreciate you being a part of it. It was such fun to meet all of the collegial, the college and university professors around the state, and then to get you together and have you meet each other too, which was a pleasure. And I'm sorry that we didn't get to meet for an opening reception because the pandemic hit just as that was going to happen. So we've been speaking with artists via these video conferences. And so we really appreciate you being a part of ours today. I want to let everybody know that the Mississippi Collegiate Art Faculty Invitational Exhibition and Sue Carrie's piece will be on display at the museum through November 1st of 2020. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you get to visit the museum soon.